It's part of the process through which we assess the academic potential of all our applicants. The whole Oxford admissions process is focused on academic potential, how well you would do on this particular course of study. It's not about anything else to do with social background, manners, or anything like that. It's just about the academics. And the interview gives us an opportunity to really assess how you would cope with material that's different from stuff that you've studied at school. So we can see your school grades, we can see what your predicted grades are, but this gives us a chance to explore material that you might be studying as an undergraduate and really see how you cope with that. In addition, we usually use tutorials as our main method of teaching, and you can think of an interview as a bit like a mini tutorial. So it gives us also a chance to see how you would cope, how you would adapt to that kind of teaching method, which is very particular to Oxford and Cambridge. Very likely more than one, but it's hard to say exactly how many you'd have. You might have two in one college, you might have one in one college and one in another college. If you're applying for a subject which has more than one element to it, like for example history and politics degrees, you might have an interview with the historians and you might have a second interview with the politics tutors. It varies a lot from subject to subject. But the main thing I'd say is you probably will get more than one interview through your application to Oxford. The other thing to say is you might get invited for an interview perhaps at another college through the course of the interview process. In those cases we try to give you 24 hours notice of any extra interviews that you'd be having. I think that the key thing here is to make sure that you have an environment where you have good access to the technology you need and a reliable internet connection, and also somewhere that's safe and quiet and free from distractions, so you can really focus on the interview that you're taking. Beyond that, I don't think it matters too much as long as you have somewhere where you're comfortable. It might be at home, it might be at school. Probably the best thing to do when you get an invitation for an interview is talk to your school straight away and discuss possible things that you could do in terms of setting up the arrangements. Beyond that, I think the key is to feel comfortable in the space so you can really focus. You don't have to dress up in a suit or anything uncomfortable. You just wear your normal clothes. Make sure you have a glass of water, a pen and paper handy, and that all the equipment is just comfortably set up for you for the interview. We really want you to be able to focus on the questions and the discussion in the interview and not have any distractions. Well, you need to have a computer with a speaker, audio and perhaps headphones to help you focus on what you're hearing. Beyond that, you shouldn't need very much. The interviews are all conducted through Microsoft Teams, and you'll be getting a link, an interview invitation, which will have a link to the Microsoft Teams meeting for the interview. So you should just be able to click on the link and it'll take you straight there. For some subjects, they use additional software. There's something called Miro, which is an online whiteboard that some subjects will use. All the tech that you need will be explained to you in the interview invitation, and you shouldn't need to download anything ahead of the interview. One thing I would say though, it's quite good advice, is to maybe get hold of some of this software and just practice with it. Try it out so that you're comfortable in those environments and using it. It'll typically be tutors who are going to be actually teaching you at Oxford. So they'll be the people that if you do get a place here, would actually be the ones teaching you your degree. There'll usually be more than one of those tutors present in the room. They may be from different subjects. Very often when we have joint school degrees, we might have a panel of tutors from across all the different elements of the courses, or there might be separate interviews, say, from the historians and from the politics people for a degree like history and politics. But the main thing to bear in mind is it will be the actual tutors who would be teaching you who will be running the interviews. Everyone gets nervous. We're well aware of that, and the people interviewing you will know that as well. We don't want you to be stressed in the interview because we really want you to perform at your best. It's our way of assessing your academic potential, and we can't do that if you're really nervous. Sometimes the tutors will start off with some really simple questions or questions about your personal statement or why you're interested in studying the course, just as a way of getting the ball rolling, just to make you feel comfortable talking to them in the interview space. Beyond that, they will ask you challenging questions. They're looking to try to stretch you, and there may be times when it gets really difficult. But you don't need to worry about that. That shows that the interview is working well. It's meant to take you out of your comfort zone. Don't be scared to say, if you're having some difficulties understanding something, or if you need a bit more time to work something through, you could say that to the people interviewing you. Sometimes there aren't right answers. Very often, in fact, the kind of questions we're asking in interviews are not ones where there is a single answer at the end, which is right or wrong. We're looking to understand your thinking process, how you take on the kind of challenging questions that we deal with at university level, and that you're open to thinking about them, that you don't run away from a difficult question, that you can see the kinds of complexities that are often there in the sort of material that you engage with. So don't think that you have to get to a particular right answer. Often it's more a case of exploring your thinking processes and how you engage with a really difficult question. And we're looking for you to be curious, we're looking for you to be open-minded and flexible in your thinking about it, and we're looking for you to really listen carefully to the questions you're being asked and try to consider different angles on them. Not really, I'm afraid. The process is all about your academic potential, and what the interview is really trying to do is to assess that. The tutors might ask you some questions about your hobbies, perhaps at the very beginning of the interview, just to sort of get the ball rolling, but very quickly they're going to want to get into an academic exercise with you. It's not about your hobbies, it's not about extracurricular stuff. Overwhelmingly, it's about your academic potential for the particular course you've applied for. Well, I think probably the best thing to do to prepare for an interview is to look at some of the demonstration interviews that we have online. Look at one if there is one for your subject, but you could also look at other subjects as well, just to get a taste for the way in which the kinds of questions that get asked and the way in which the conversation is structured. Beyond that, I'd suggest it's a really good idea to find somebody that you can talk about the subject with. That could be a family friend, it could be a teacher at school perhaps. You want to find somebody else, and I'd suggest that you both try and read something that's related to your subject. That might be a newspaper article or a magazine article. If you go to the course web pages, they very often have reading suggestions there, and you could look at one of those readings together. Then I'd suggest you just talk about it with them for about 15 minutes. And that would be really good practice for an interview, because it's really important that you're able to talk about it in a conversational way about the subject you're looking to study. A good idea would be to have you start off saying what you think about the particular thing you've both read, and ask them to just ask you questions about your thinking, not to try to debate you on it, but to sort of be asking you questions like, well, why did you think that? Or where do you think that? Why do you think that's interesting? That would be the best way of modelling what an interview might be like. Well, if it's a technical problem, you should let the interviewers know as soon as possible. If you can't hear them, if you're having difficulty hearing them, if there's interference, anything that's interrupting the process, let the tutors know. If you lose the internet connection altogether, you should try and call our admissions office to tell them of the problem. In cases like that, we'd often rearrange the interview. We don't want any technical issues to disadvantage you at all. Beyond that, if what's going wrong is that you feel like the interview isn't going well, the first thing I'd say is people often feel like that in interviews. They're meant to be quite challenging, quite difficult spaces where people often feel like they're under some pressure. So don't be alarmed if you're feeling that way. In fact, that might be a sign that things are going quite well. What you want to do is make sure that you take time to think and give your best answers to questions. You can always ask the tutors if they could clarify a particular question or what they mean by a certain thing. You could maybe explain to them why you're having difficulty coming up with an answer, because that would show them how your thinking process is working, and that will be really valuable.